Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friday Tech Byte by Veeam Software. It's an exciting time today. Me and Sam get to talk to you about centralized cloud data management. And we're not residents on the Friday Tech Byte, but we've always happy to do LinkedIn Lives and have a chat about the cloud and just generally talk about everything cloudy. So I'm David Hill, Global Technologist in Veeam's Product Strategy and Office of the CTO. And as you can probably guess, a lot of my focus is on cloud native technology and public clouds. Sam, want to give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Sam Nichols, Director of Public Cloud here at Veeam Software. So David and I are partners in crime. Anytime that you deal with something with Veeam related to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, you're likely going to come across these two faces. I think this is what, third, fourth one this week anyway, David. So we've
Yeah,
had plenty of
getting through
practice,
a
so this should
few.
be a good one for you guys.
Yeah, and obviously don't let Sam's accent fool you. He likes to pretend he's English, but he does live in America. And although I am in England today, I am also very American. I live out in Austin in Texas, but you'll see me on the interactive map on the screen. I'm over in England. Sam, where are you? I always forget.
I'm in Wisconsin, but right on the border, about 20 minutes outside of Minneapolis. So
There we go. So please feel free to tell us where you're coming from, what's your US state, what's your country. If you want to go into your town, we're always happy to hear where you're from. So let us know what's happening and where you are. And we can see there's a few people popping up already, and we've got the UK, and my geography is terrible. I think that
that's
puts us
Romania, mate.
down
Romania.
Romania.
I
So
think
I always
anyway.
remember Italy's the boot. That's the only thing I remember from school. So please let us know where you're from. And really, if what I want to talk about today, though, is centralized data management and especially around cloud. So, as Sam mentioned, you probably might have seen webinars from us in the past talking about public cloud and this multi-cloud world and hybrid cloud world that we're living in. And although people have kind of predicted the death of the data center for the past 10, 15 years, it's not really happened. But since COVID, obviously the public cloud adoption rate has exploded. And what we kind of want to do today is just run through a few conversational topics around that. And then I'm going to spend about 10 minutes giving you a demo of how you can actually manage all your backup data in and across all these different platforms, not just necessarily the public cloud, but also your on-prem platforms as well.
One of the
So,
things I actually want to pick on that you said there, David, as well, is like around like predicting the death of the data center, right? Everyone knows there's been this huge shift towards the public cloud, and that renders us with a hybrid or a multi-cloud environment, right? The overwhelming majority of organizations have that. Depending on where you go, some say high 80%, some say mid 90s, and anywhere in between. And one of the things that I just want to say is I don't think that hybrid cloud is this kind of stop on our journey towards, 100% being in the cloud. I think hybrid cloud is here now and it's here to stay, purely because there are some workloads that make sense to run in the cloud. And there are some workloads that make sense to run on premises, whether you're looking at that from a flexibility, agility, speed perspective, cost, data sovereignty, performance. The list goes on. Some things just make sense on premises. Some things make sense in a cloud. Some things make sense in one cloud more than another. And that's why I think that we're going to be in this hybrid multi-cloud world for the foreseeable future, at least. I mean, who knows? I'm not a fortune teller. I can't tell what the future is going to hold, but I think that that's where we're going to land. And that's what the topic is going to be about today, because then how do you start to manage data protection for all these different environments, all these different platforms as efficiently, cost effectively as possible? It's a good question, and hopefully we're going
yeah.
to help today.
Yeah, I wish I had the sports almanac of what's happening in the public cloud going forward. It'd be certainly good for the vision. But as Sam touched on as well, like the whole hybrid cloud model that is here to stay, certainly for the next, I would estimate the next 10 years at least, because there's so many different workloads. Some workloads aren't even suitable to move to the cloud. People are still running physical machines as well. Lots of customers I speak to, certainly very large enterprises, still have mainframes. They still have physical SQL servers. You know, a lot of people aren't just picking those up and saying, oh, well, I'll just move those to the cloud because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But as new workloads are developed as well, we talk a lot about containers and Kubernetes. They make a lot of sense to run in the public cloud. So you want other workloads closer to those workloads that are already running there. So moving your workloads around is another piece of this multi-cloud, hybrid cloud world. And I'm going to kind of dive into that a little bit more in the demo as well. But Sam, certainly from a cloud mobility perspective, you're obviously very popular in the marketing space. You speak to lots of customers and build out lots of use cases and a lot of the white papers around that. What kind of conversations have you seen with customers about those kind of workloads and how they're struggling to move workloads between different platforms?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the first part of the story is kind of what you would expect, right? We are being tasked with accelerating our cloud adoption, and therefore the cloud has pretty much become the de facto standard for anything new that we're creating. But there is also a motion to take workloads that run on premises and move them to the cloud. And this is not from a disaster recovery standpoint. This is from a migration standpoint, lift and shift. And we certainly see that happening, and I'm sure you'll show in your demo how easy Veeam makes that to do. But you mentioned a point where, you know, you can't really just take a workload that runs on premises and shift it to the cloud and then not touch it. Right? There's a ton of refactoring, re-architecting, redesigning to truly make that workload cloud native, so it can not only take advantage of all of the benefits that the public cloud has to offer, but it doesn't become such a massive burden or expense center as well, right? A workload designed to run on premises, you already own all of that infrastructure. You're not paying again for the compute, the networking, the storage. You've already paid for that. So you kind of don't really necessarily have to worry about it. But through the cloud lens, as you start to run things in the cloud where you do pay for every ounce of compute, network, storage, API calls, whatever it might be, you really have to rethink about how that application or workload runs in order to be optimized for the cloud. So that's the first part. The second bit is cross-cloud mobility as well. That might be, again, from a disaster recovery scenario, it might be from a migration standpoint, you know, taking a workload that runs in Microsoft Azure, moving it to AWS because there is something drawing me to AWS, whether it's cost, performance, features, whatever it might be. And then the one that just seems really antithetical to the tool track that's out there is workloads that are coming from the cloud to on-premises in the data center. And not a lot of people think about that because, again, it kind of goes against the grain with what everyone's talking about. But over 50% of organizations that we speak to are doing that. That might be, I mean, a very, very small percentage of that is because of a disaster recovery scenario, right? I've instantiated it in the cloud. It's run there for a certain amount of time. My on-prem infrastructure is good. Now I'm going to move it back. But a lot of it is, you know, I might have moved the workload to the cloud. I haven't thought about the things that I just spoke about around performance and cost, and it's costing me an arm and a leg. I'm not getting the performance that I want. Now I've got to bring it back. Maybe I didn't think about data sovereignty laws or compliance, and now I've got to bring it back anyway. And the other piece is just workloads being developed in the cloud. Cloud's a great place to develop workloads. And we already had the mindset of, okay, I'm going to develop it in the cloud, but I always intended to run it on premises. So that's kind of what we're seeing. And it leads to this notion of just being able to do what you want with your data when you want to do it, right? Not being locked into a specific platform, just this minimally, if not non-prescriptive approach to the fact that it's your data, you do what you want with it when you want.
Yeah, and you make some really good points there when you're talking about things like moving workloads from the cloud to on-premises, moving around in general. And I think one of the big challenges a lot of people have been facing recently is finding a data protection solution that can integrate with the different platforms. You know, a few years ago, everyone was like, well, it's okay if it's running in the cloud, just put some agents in there. But then when you're looking at trying to do restores and stuff like that, agent based is great for certain use cases and still massively has its place in the cloud. But typically, having a platform and a data protection platform that can, with the different cloud providers, the different on-prem hypervisors, is a big thing as well. Because when you think about what you're actually doing, like trying to take native snapshots across all these different platforms, can become very complex to manage because snapshots are expensive. You know, they're expensive if you're doing it on vSphere and you're storing it on your storage arrays. It's expensive if you keep loads of snapshots around in AWS and Azure. So being able to manage all those different snapshots across these platforms is a big piece as well. And I think from my perspective, like if I take my Veeam badge off, although I've got Yoda on my t-shirt, I haven't got a Veeam t-shirt on, but it is green. Making sure that the solution that you're investing in is not only fit for purpose today and can integrate with these platforms, but has a roadmap going forward to look at other features and capabilities for them as well. And I think that's probably one of the big takeaways that I'd like to share with people from this. So while we've got, go on, yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you again, man, because my brain's going because you started talking about agents, right? I think the agent approach to protecting cloud workloads is attractive to a lot of organizations because the current tool set that they probably use to protect on-premises workloads likely has an agent-based component designed for, I don't know, physical. Maybe they use it on virtual machines. I don't know why. But now they can just take that same tool set that they already own, that they've already learned, that they know how to use, that they may already have licenses for, and just go put them in the cloud. And is that going to protect your data? Like, absolutely. Like you say, there are some considerations around cost and overhead and management, especially if you're dealing with a large cloud-based environment. But the other drawbacks include, we're not just dealing with infrastructure as a service when we talk public cloud. There's PaaS and SaaS as well. So if we take something like a flavor of Amazon RDS, I don't know, like a MySQL database, which is platform as a service, well, how are you going to protect that? You can't do that with an agent because where are you going to install it? And that's why another driver behind the need to have a native approach is not only does it give you best in class protection, but sometimes it is the only option that you have.
Yeah.
But then that introduces a new tool set, and then we get away from this idea of centralized cloud data management. Now you're dealing with point products.
Yeah, you make some really good, valid points there, and certainly from a takeaway that those are some of the big considerations around protecting workloads in this multi-cloud world. So let's quickly go to the map again. Let's see where people are coming from, and then we're going to jump into a demo. Wow, look at all the green spots. So we've got Massachusetts, Utah, Texas, my home, I was going to say hometown. It's a bit bigger than a town. South Carolina, we've got Pennsylvania, the Netherlands, Romania, Mexico, Argentina, Dubai, Iran, Sri Lanka, and India. So we've got a lot of people from around the world today. So hopefully you can understand my terrible Northern English accent and Sam's very posh English accent. We're obviously from very different ends of the UK.
I'm just surprised all those geography lessons just started coming back.
Oh, I know, it's amazing.
You got all of those.
1 minute I didn't know where Switzerland was, and now all of a sudden I know where everything is. Yeah.
There's no chance to do
it. Yeah. So we're not going to tell you how I suddenly learned geography. It was just downloaded in my brain.
Matrix style.
Also, what we're going to do now is just quickly dive into a demo. So we're going to bring up my screen, and what we're going to do is, of course, it decides to lock itself out as soon as we go. Come on. It's going to work in a sec.
That's David's house in England right there.
Yeah. So I'm sat right at the top with a little satellite and the internet.
Starlink.
So what I'm going to show you now is anyone who's familiar with Veeam backup and replication will recognize this console. And what we're seeing here is just a list of essentially backup jobs. And the first thing to notice is that we obviously have a lot of different types. So we have, you can see AWS, EC2, we've got AWS EFS, we've got RDS, we've got some VPCs, which is our virtual private cloud configuration backups. And then we go on to the different platforms. So we've got like Azure, we've got GCP, we've got some Azure SQL as well. And then we've also got our vSphere, and we've got some Windows and Linux agents. So from a centralized data management perspective, my Veeam backup and replication is running in our on-premises data center, but I have workloads spread across all these different platforms, all these different cloud providers. I'm running workloads on vSphere. I'm running some physical workloads as well. So you can see that just from this one window alone, we're able to manage all our backup jobs and all our backup policies across all these different platforms. I'm also able to do things like backup copy jobs as well. So when you think about things like the 3-2-1 rule, which is 3 copies of your data across 2 media types with at least one off-site, I can actually take backups of my workloads running in AWS or Azure or wherever, and actually run a backup copy job and copy those down locally to my on-premises data center and have those stored in my on-prem environment as well. Why would I want to do that? Well, that gives me a number of options. Obviously, I'm meeting the requirements for that best practice of storing my backups off-site. They're in completely different media types. You know, one could be on my data domain in my data center. One copy could be on my S3 object storage repositories, but it allows me to manage that data and have copies in different locations. So if there was a major outage in AWS, for example, and not that it's likely to happen, but S3 went down completely, I can still restore my backups to my on-prem infrastructure, my vSphere environment, very quickly from these locally copied backups. But it doesn't stop there either. What I want to do first is show you how easy it is to just go and say, right, I want to go protect some workloads out in the public cloud. So we go to our backup infrastructure and we go to our managed servers down here. Now, again, anyone familiar with Veeam backup and replication and on-premises, you just simply right click and you say add server. And in the same way that you would add a vSphere, vCenter or Hyper-V or any Windows and Linux, you can also go and protect your cloud environment. So we can say, right, okay, I want to go and protect AWS. So I can just click on this and I get the option to either connect to an existing Veeam backup for AWS appliance. If I've already deployed it from the AWS marketplace and I've done some testing, I can just say I want to go and deploy a new appliance. And that will walk me through this wizard that you see on the left-hand side here that just says, right, I need to go pick my AWS account, pick an instance, what network do I want to put it on, and so on. It's really quick, really simple, and it does it all for you. And then we can just go protect all our workloads directly through Veeam backup and replication. So I can go back to my jobs, I can right click and I say, I want to create a new backup policy or a backup job. Do I want to do virtual machine? Do I want to do my Macs, AWS? I can pick my different instance types. I can go do the same for Azure as well. So it's very simple to set up and configure. Once we have that, we can then manage those backups regardless of where they are. So we can go down to our backups and we can see we have a number of different options here. So we can look at our snapshots. These are purely the cloud native snapshots. So we can see I've got some AWS snapshots here. I've even got my EFS ones. So I can right click. I can restore individual EFS files. I can restore the whole EFS volume. I can expand this. I can do the same with RDS. and same with my EC2 instances. I can just restore from snapshot to that native cloud provider directly from Veeam Backup and Replication, regardless of the public cloud I'm using. Then if we go down to our external repositories, this is where all our backups of our cloud workloads that are offloaded to the object storage repositories are managed. So if you're taking an EC2 backup, we take a snapshot, we can offload that to our S3 object storage backup repositories or our Azure Blob or our GCP object storage. And what's really powerful here is I can say here, for example, I've got a production workload. If I expand this, it's a live production workload. It's my Unify controller that I run in the AWS cloud that manages all my home network. I can simply right click on this and restore this from a backup in object storage in S3. But I have a number of options. So when we're talking about that cloud mobility perspective, how we can move workloads around the different platforms, we can do it here. So the first option is instant recovery. So we can do a instant recovery of this workload to vSphere or Hyper-V, which allows us to actually live stream the data from the S3 object storage backup repository to instantly recover this workload onto a vSphere or Hyper-V host. So that's very powerful because I can recover this to my on-prem environment and spin it up instantly. But I also have the option to go and recover to different cloud environments. So as Sam was saying about how we live in this kind of multi-cloud world, and what a lot of customers are finding a challenge is moving their workloads across platforms. So I can just say, right, this Unify controller, I want to go and restore to Microsoft Azure. We pick that particular workload, and then I'll go through my Azure details, and of course it's a live demo and my credentials have expired. That you always see that it's live, and I can pick my different subscriptions. So if I pick a different one that actually has the credentials configured, I can then pick the location that I want to restore that to, and then I can walk through a Azure wizard which will allow me to pick the Azure VM size, the Azure resource groups. It reminds me about data sovereignty. Obviously, we all live in the GDPR world. And I can then go through all these different wizards to go set my VM size. Obviously, AWS uses different t-shirt sizes to what Azure do, so we provide you with a recommendation. And we can walk through and we can actually then go and restore this workload directly to Azure. We do all the conversion on the fly, and then you'll just simply see that powered on in Microsoft Azure. So it's a very powerful way of not only managing all our backups and all our jobs across all these different platforms, but also gives us a powerful way to migrate and move our workloads to different public clouds, different on-prem platforms. And it's the same regardless of whether we're doing physical backups, we're doing virtual backups, or we're doing public cloud backups. So we're going to switch back to me and Sam, and you'll get to see our pretty faces again.
Yeah, I've seen that questions come in from, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Aegi on YouTube. One question about cloud, can this also be monitored with Veeam One? So yes, you can monitor, backup and usage statistics using Veeam One across AWS, Azure, Google. You've got the same capacity planning features that are available with Veeam One as well. So very much compatible with the public cloud as well. And I think I haven't seen any more questions come through, so I guess we can start to bring it home a little bit. So
yeah, I want to kind of just give some quick reminders to everyone watching. So on Monday, June the 13th, we got the Industry Insights returns for episode 95. So that's Jason Buffington and Dave Russell. They're going to continue talking about a very popular topic now, ransomware trends reports, and they're going to explore some remediation strategies. And then on Friday, June the 17th, Kirsten Stoner and Melissa Palmer are going to discuss 6 reasons why we have a love-hate relationship with the public cloud. Now, Sam and I, all we do is love the public cloud. The cloud is everything. So I'm not quite sure why they're going to talk about hating the cloud, but we all know Melissa's not a fan of the public cloud. So it'll be interesting to hear her perspective. So I'm certainly going to tune in on that. Both shows are live at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So that's probably 5 p.m. UK time. I'm not going to do lots of different time zones, but you get the idea. So I would recommend watching those as well. It'll be really exciting. And then finally, let's have one last look at the map before we go, see where some people have come in from. And I'm going to show my geography skills again. There we are. There's the boot. Italy. I knew it'd come up. So the one country I learnt in geography at school was Italy looks like a boot. That's what my teacher told me. We've got Belgium, Austria, Kenya, South Africa. So, and it's a lot of countries that we've been going through. So thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Please, what I would say is some takeaways from this is the one thing that I touched on is anyone who's looking at managing their workloads in the cloud. Obviously, this is a Veeam show, so go to veeam.com and have a look at Veeam's offerings, but make sure you find a data protection solution that can do this centralized data management and integrate with all these platforms. Sam, any last words from you before we go?
Yeah, I think just like really reiterating what that last bit that you just said, right? You don't have to try and take that square peg in a round hole approach. There are native platforms out there that build that purpose-built backup for that specific environment that are going to give you that best-in-class protection. That doesn't have to come at the cost of multiple point products, multiple interfaces to manage. You can kind of have your cake and eat it as well. I'm going to coin that as a marketing term. Veeam, have your cake and eat it. We provide that purpose-built backup and recovery for all these environments we've spoken about today and more, and then bring it all together under Veeam Backup and Replication, as you've seen with David. So yeah, go around, have a read. We always do free editions, free trials, fully featured. You can get hands-on. It's the best way to really see how it all works.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope this was beneficial. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, everyone.